What is it with teams in Cleveland going out and trading 3 first-round picks for an All-Star? Welcome to this very, very special live breaking news edition of the Sports Note here on YouTube and also on Twitch. I'm your host, Jim Cranitti, and something just came down here within the course of maybe the last 2 hours that the Cleveland Cavaliers have acquired All-Star point guard Donovan Mitchell from the Utah Jazz in for essentially kind of I don't want to call it a king's ransom, but it's a lot closer to Ditka trading the entire house for Ricky Williams than it is, the Herschel Walker trade. For those of you who have not seen, we're going to immediately throw it up here on the screen very quickly. The Cavaliers acquire All-Star Donovan Mitchell. The Utah Jazz acquire forward Lauri Markkanen, who the Cavs just acquired less than 2 years ago. Former All-Star Colin Sexton, first-round pick Ochai Agbaji, and more on that in a minute. 3 unprotected first-round picks and 2 pick swaps, which to the best of my knowledge means that the Cavs are going to get 2 picks back, but Utah is going to get 2 more of the Cavs. So it's essentially 3 players, a former All-Star, a first-rounder, and 5 picks for an All-Star and 2 picks coming back. This is very, very perplexing when it actually went down, but more on that here in a couple of moments. The more the effect is kind of settled in a little bit more, the more this makes sense if you're a Cavs fan for several reasons. Number one, you've now got 3 All-Stars in your starting lineup between Jarrett Allen, Colin Sexton, and of course, Donovan Mitchell. And quite honestly, Evan Mobley should have been an All-Star and was also third in Rookie of the Year voting last year. So that's 4 potential All-Stars, which actually means you get that 5th one in there. It could be a rotation of Chetty Osman. It could be Isaac Okoro. You've got some options there with that 5th. You don't have a whole lot of depth in your bench. You also can, possibly move somebody like it, even though it would be playing undersized and playing small, maybe a Karis LeVert would play that wing, but you're going to have LeVert more than likely spelling Garland or Mitchell. The most important thing, if you're a Cavs fan here, is this gets you Mitchell, but it keeps him away from the New York Knicks, which Mike and I actually talked about on our Wise Guys show a couple of weeks ago. That was where a lot of people had him going, much like how I talked about on my NHL free agency period with the Columbus Blue Jackets landing Johnny Gaudreau, and not a whole lot of people were talking about it up until the 11th hour. This is also the same thing with Donovan Mitchell. We kind of had a feeling Mitchell could be moved with the teardown of the Jazz, which is even more surprising, and that's another thing we're going to talk about here in a couple of minutes. But the talk with the Cavs was not gaining a whole lot of steam, and all of a sudden, this comes out of absolutely nowhere on a Thursday afternoon, 6 weeks before training camp opens, and now the Cavs have put themselves in a position to where they're not looking to just get into the playoff tournament, the play-in tournament, I should say, like they did last year. They're looking for a top 3 spot in the East, behind the Miami Heat and the Milwaukee Bucks. And we saw how good they were, and then the injury bug hit them last year, which we talked about. You lost Colin Sexton 3 games into the season. Jarrett Allen, Markkanen, LeVert, Garland, Kevin Love, Isaac Okoro, every player that meant anything to the Cavs last year spent at least 3 weeks on injured reserve, and a lot of that actually occurred after February 1st, where which was just weeks before the All-Star game, and basically dropped the Cavs straight from 2nd in the East at that point to 7th, and left them with no continuity by the time they came back to lose both play-in games and sit home, although it landed you Agbaji. And that's the one key component I know Utah wanted for something like this, because Agbaji is a guy who you can not so much build a franchise around, but he is a very key component that he could develop into an absolute superstar. Think about it. Ochai Agbaji was the best player on the national championship winning team last year and wasn't even in the conversation for the Naismith Player of the Year by the time that all rolled around. Where's the knowledge in that? And instead it goes to the kid from Kentucky, aka one and done you. Agbaji was a very, very high touted player. Quite honestly, should have been a top 5 pick. How he fell to the Cavs at 15 is beyond me. Might have been 13. I got to go back and look, but it was in that teens era. Very, very back end of the lottery. But again, if we put this up there, the Sexton, is a former All-Star, and that was something that you knew with Garland being signed. They were trying to look to move Sexton in some capacity. Whether that was going to be, and let me actually get one of the graphics off the screen here so that doesn't interfere a little bit. But this was something where Sexton, there were talks that he could end up going to the San Antonio Spurs because of their teardown, and they had enough draft picks to be able to send back to the Cavaliers. Well, the Cavaliers now are thinking with 4 All-Stars in their starting lineup, and then something that you can plug in. It's not a big 3 like out in Golden State or in Boston or in Brooklyn, but it's a big 3 of nothing but young homegrown talent. And then you add in one of the top 15 players in the league. And the Cavs right now don't care so much about those picks. Now, they better hope that something like this works and they can contend in the Eastern Conference and the Central Division, especially with the uprising of the Chicago Bulls, because you could use those picks if something happens. Let's say one of those starters gets hurt and your season takes a nosedive. Well, you've got no way to replace him, and you better hope that starter comes back 100% the following season or later in the year, where they can actually develop some continuity. Markkanen, a 7-footer who can play inside and outside, and that's one of the things that J.D. Bickerstaff, the head coach of the Cavaliers, is really going to miss now, because it's something where he could run. At one point, he was running 3 7-footers and a 6'10" player on the floor at the same time, between running Jared Allen, Kevin Love, Markkanen, and Dean Wade. Again, Love is 6'10", Dean Wade 6'10", 6'11", Jared Allen 7 foot, Markkanen's a 7-footer, and all of those but Jared Allen can shoot the 3 from anywhere in the forecourt. So this is actually something that Utah needed to be able to get this kind of return. The Agbaji thing stings a little bit for me. The 2 pick swaps, let's see what happens with those. Maybe get some guys in the G League, and maybe kind of get some depth. But what does this do to the Cavs roster now? So let's take a look at that. This now means that the Cavs depth chart for 2022-23 looks like this, and this is in no particular order. You got Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Karis LeVert, Isaac Okoro, who can actually play guard or forward, Ricky Rubio back on a 1-year deal, Raul Neto, and RJ Nembhard. Neto and Nembhard are 2-way contracts. In the front court, you've got Kevin Love, Cedi Osman, Dean Wade, Lamar Stevens, and rookie Isaiah Mobley. And then at center, you've got Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. And Mobley will be able to play the 4 in the rotation when he and Allen are on the floor at the same time. This actually means going forward for next year, you're going to lose Karis LeVert. He is not signed through next year. Ricky Rubio is likely going to be gone. You've got to make a decision on Kevin Love, with LeBron James now signing that massive 2-year deal. Kevin Love just celebrated. He was the last guy of the big 3 that the Cavs put together to win the championship back in 2016, going up against that Warrior dynasty. And he's also now the longest tenured Cavalier of that, having again been with the franchise for 8 years. There was talk that he could be moved There was talk if LeBron came back, they'd have to make a decision because you're not going to be able to pay both of them. Does Love actually come back? He's going to be 35 by the end of next season. Chetty Osman is a fan favorite here. He's definitely a stopgap. Dean Wade is a guy who did play a lot of two-way, was hurt for a little while early on, but actually fills in very nicely. Lamar Stevens plays very good defense. Isaiah Mobley, there's a lot of people, and Mike Martinez, my co-host on the Wise Guy Sports Show, is one of them, thinks that Isaiah Mobley might be a better offensive player than Evan. Evan is a very, very good defender. Isaiah, if Isaiah can develop, putting the Mobley brothers together would certainly fill that that hole in the wing for the Cavaliers. And then naturally Mobley and Allen. What else more can you say with them? Two of the best in the game at their position, and both of them that young. But this is definitely something where the Cavaliers hold all the cards now and are trying to show that, hey, we don't need LeBron coming back. We don't need him breaking up this, this franchise with what he would probably want to do with the roster. It's something that hang on one second. My Twitch feed is echoing here. Let's actually get that cut off on my end for a moment. And if any of you watching on Twitch are getting an echo, please let me know, and I'll try and fix that. I actually just try to mute the tab in my Chrome browser. But with the Cavs being that close to the playoffs last year, there's no reason to think that they shouldn't be in the playoffs this year. But let's go to the flip side of this deal. This actually, you've now seen in a very, very short order the complete and total destruction of the Utah Jazz. The Jazz 2 years ago had the best record in the NBA. They followed that up with a division title last year. What are they expected to throw out there this year? And the ironic thing is that the two teams involved in this trade made major uniform adjustments going into the season. The Cavs go back to their wine and gold, kind of like an old gold, and then the Jazz almost completely abandoned their motif for about the last 10, 12 years. So it's, instead of the navy green and yellow, it's basically black and gold, and they announced that they're going to bring back the purple Karl Malone mountain jerseys for although those things still look blue to me with my color blindness. They bring those back as alternates. The Cavs actually do have their alternate Jumbo C logo jersey minus the sleeves that won them the championship back in 2016. But with the Jazz, just over the course of the last 18 months, you've seen Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell both leave in major deals. Gobert went to the Timberwolves for Malik Beasley, Patrick Beverley, Leandro Bolmaro, Jared Vanderbilt, the draft rights to Walker Kessler, and then they swapped 2026 first-round picks. And then also Minnesota threw in 4 other first round. UCLA's Final Four run a few years ago. But there's really not a whole lot out there. Now, this actually, some of the Cavs players help them kind of gain a little bit of relevancy, but they're not going anywhere. They're certainly not going to win a third division title. They're in full kind of teardown mode at this point, hoping that they can strike a little lightning in a bottle here. But let's see here before we go. Let's see what this looks like for the Cavs for this year and next year salary wise. This actually means that you've got Donovan Mitchell slated to make $30.35 million this year. Kevin Love is at 28.9. Allen is at 20 even. LeVert is 18.7, still in the last year of that deal coming over from the Pacers at the trade deadline last year, and Darius Garland at 8.9. Look at what this does for the 23-24 season. Mitchell only goes up $2 million with his deal. Love is a free agent after this year. Again, you've got to make a decision if you're Kobe Altman, the general manager of the Cavaliers. Karis LeVert is an RFA after this year. You've got to make a decision there. Jared Allen stays at the same for next year. But Darius Garland signs that max contract extension just a few weeks ago, which was the telltale sign that Colin Sexton was going to be expendable. His contract jumps from just under 9 to over $33 million next year. Dan Gilbert, the owner of the Cavaliers, is not going to have any trouble paying a luxury tax if this gets the Cavaliers that much closer to a second NBA title, and actually maybe and gets them, let's even say gets them into the Eastern Conference Finals. It would only be the second time in the history of the franchise that the Cavs went to the Eastern Conference Finals without LeBron James. The first was with the Mark Price, Brad Daugherty era Cavaliers back in the late 1980s and early 1990s. It would also, if they got to the finals, it would be the first time they've ever done that without LeBron. But if you look at the roster, let's go back to the previous slide. This now actually adds depth and very good young depth. Look at that. Mitchell's only 25. Garland, Okoro, both Mobleys and Jared Allen, those are all players that are going to be under 26 by the end of the year. Karis LeVert's going to be, I want to say, 27, 28. Chetty Osman's going to be 27, 28. Kevin Love, yes, is going to be grandpa, and again, I think he's going to be 35 by the end of the year. Ricky Rubio is going to be 34, 35. But they are in prime position. If this thing gels and works, they just need some veteran leadership in that front court for Love. And I would love to see a scenario, no pun intended, where Kevin comes back for another year or two, finishes out his career here in Cleveland, and is a part of something very, very special, especially with how up and down he was the last 2 years. Look at last year compared to the 2020-21 season. The 2020-21 season, Love didn't care, was hurt constantly, was extremely frustrated with how poorly the Cavs played, and last year might have been one of the most valuable pieces of that team with the way that he helped guide and motivate the young talent, and especially taking his role, no longer being a starter, coming in off the bench. I was at 2 or 3 games last year at Romo Fijo where Kevin came off the bench and ended up scoring at least 15 points in under 25 minutes worth of work. So again, very, very young, very deep, and this might actually be a better constructed team top to bottom than any of the LeBron led teams. Let's look at the 2016 team. You had your starters were LeBron, Love, Kyrie, J.R. Smith, and Tristan Thompson. Really outside of that, you had Iman Shumpert, Daniel Dellavedova, and then you had a mishmash of some other guys in there that certainly would not start or probably be in the top 8 rotation on most other teams in the league, certainly not contenders. It was the starters that carried the Cavs through that. But going back to this, you've got Okoro with his defense that can actually, even though you're going to be giving up a little bit more size and kind of, again, you're not going to be running 7-footers out there like you did last year. You're going to have a more consistent and normalized lineup night in, night out. But again, Okoro's going to be there for his defense. Ricky Rubio is going to be there for his facilitation. You're going to be able to get hit and miss nights with Chetty Osman, but when he's on, he's very good. When he's off, he's still not the worst thing in the world. Dean Wade plays well and gives you an extra body to bang around with. Lamar Stevens plays very well. The biggest question mark again is Karis LeVert, and we'd like to actually see how he does with a full season with this team. We know it's going to cut into his minutes, but LeVert is a very, very good player coming in off the bench, and I would imagine, especially with all of this firepower that they're running out there right now, he's going to have no problem being able to step in as a slasher and a scorer to be able to spell Garland or Mitchell. The Cavs last year were the second or third best defensive team in the league. They're giving up quite a bit of their defensive continuity with guys like Markkanen, departing. Sexton, I don't even know if the word defense was in his vocabulary. Agbaji had all the potentials to be a great, great player on both ends of the floor. Let's actually see what he does out in Utah. I would have loved to have seen what he would have done here. Hopefully this doesn't turn into, if you want to actually call it 2 tons of irony, hopefully this doesn't turn into what you had when the Cavs acquired Kevin Love, where they had to give up Andrew Wiggins, who now turned himself into an all-star and won a championship. And Kevin is still here with the Cavs. Yes, helped them win a championship, but you kind of hope that this kind of doesn't blow up where the Cavs get that close, and then the Jazz now have enough potential to build for the future and end up winning a championship on the strength of what Ochai Agbaji is able to turn into, and you add Colin Sexton into that mix as well. But thank you everyone for joining me tonight. Mike and I will be live tomorrow night at 9 p.m. On YouTube and also on Twitch. I believe they're going to be on his channels previewing Saturday's Ohio State Notre Dame marquee football game to open up both of their schedules for the 2022 college football season. And the Wise Guy Sports Show will actually be coming to you next weekend. That we're going to have a date pretty much nailed down here. Hopefully by the end of that show tomorrow, at the very worst, coming back off the holiday, we're going to have another episode of the JC24 Sports Note up on the blog and also here on Twitch and also on YouTube. Certainly here sometime over the holiday. Everyone have yourself a safe, happy holiday weekend. Enjoy a lot of great baseball. We've got college football coming back. We're knocking on the door of the NFL. The NHL opens back up very, very soon. If you're a soccer fan, you got some big matchups coming up this week. And then also, if you're like me and you're a wrestling fan, you've got AEW's All Out this weekend, which is shaping up to be one of the best cards of the year. So everyone have yourself a great, great rest of your night. Let me know what you think down in the comment box below. Hit me up on Twitter. We'll actually put that back up here with my handle and the blog. You can see it right there. It's also linked down below in the description. And we will see you guys tomorrow night. Take care, everyone. And again, thanks again for joining us.